All right. Howdy. Howdy. All right. First, let me say thank you all for letting me crash your party. I do want to thank Scott and thank Etrit and Eddie for allowing me to talk with you guys today. Is anyone, do y'all know who Hines is? Raise your hand if you know who Hines is. Okay, so not a terribly silly question. So let me say, so Hines is a commercial real estate company. We are the largest private real estate company in the world. We've been in business for 66 years, and some of the reasons I want to talk to you about a little bit about our background is because we're going to talk about how we are thinking about the future of work and how that's going to come into play. So Hines is interesting because we do every asset type. You guys may have read that we've got the Tampa Bay Rays, a new stadium, a new community. We've done Petco Park. We do multifamily. We do industrial. We do retail. We do office. We do it in 30 countries. And we also raise money, right? So we're a financial services institution that raises capital to place it into real estate. Today, we have just shy of $100 billion of assets under management for what I'll call equity owned. We usually have investment partners. In fact, we usually have major investment partners. We raise money from people, place it into real estate. We develop, we property manage. We do a little bit of it all. In addition to the 100 billion assets under management, we have close to 500 properties that we third party manage for other people. So just to give you a little bit of, we have a lot of stakeholders that we work with, our investors, our occupiers, visitors, our own company, et cetera. So, I don't think I have to tell you all, we're at an inflection point with real estate, particularly office. So Hines really wants to emerge out of this cycle with innovation. And that's where I'm spending all of my time. So I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Hines. I'm part of a group that we call the Global Digital Strategy Office. That also is our business process transformation as well as our data and analytics team. Together we make up the Global Digital Strategy Office, thinking about how are we going to take the built environment and make a digital environment. Yes. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is we have a global initiative going on. It's called the Future of the Workplace. It's a little misnomer because we're also thinking about living. We're also thinking about industrial as well. But we're really coming up with innovative programs on how we want to think about our assets going forward. Part of that approach is we're really connecting people with technology. We call it the Hines Experience, HX. We actually have a Hines Experience Academy where everybody goes through a training program that touches on every one of these tenets. We're going to talk about the technology and data component today. So we are really thinking about people. Okay, so, I sit up here, we obviously operate our buildings, and we want to be the best operator in the world, certainly. But everything I'm going to talk to you today is really about our clients. We pride ourselves on the fact that we service our clients, we put them first, even ahead of Hines' own interests. And part of what we're doing is creating a digital ecosystem, I'm going to call it a backbone, that actually services many of the initiatives around the firm. This is just one example of really about occupier experience. How are we going to technology enable? How do they get in? How do they check the gym? How do they order their coffee? How do they park? How do they get in and out of the building seamlessly using their phone? So that's just one example there. So one of the things I want to talk about is how we're approaching this. So I want to say thank you to Bill and Sarah, as well as the Distech video. I'm going to say yes, more of that, please. But I'm also hopefully going to add a new perspective to what you guys were talking about. This is how we think of technology. This is a simple chart for a reason. The bottom layer is you guys. There are source systems in the building that do the things they need to do. Access control system, BAS systems, sensors, elevators, the list goes on. And every building is a little bit different. So Hines not only develops buildings, but we buy buildings. So, we have a very heterogeneous environment in terms of what's in the building. Part of what we do is we actually add value to those buildings by upgrading the systems and bringing them up to cybersecurity standards, leasing the building, all of those things to increase value for the owner. And then ultimately, we do sell buildings. That's where you retrieve your value from those. So the systems in the buildings are super important to us. But we're never going to be in an environment where we standardize on one platform. Never. So I have to think about a portfolio view of how we address the digitization of real estate. We will take those systems in a building. We are standardized on a converged network technology. And then we really think in terms about data. So you guys heard a lot of messages about cybersecurity, data normalization. That's certainly important for the building. And I will just say, when I go from one building that maybe has Siemens in it and another building that has Siemens in it, those aren't the same Siemens today. So we really got to think through what are the standards that we want out of the individual technology provider too, because they're inconsistent today. But more importantly, I'm not going to standardize on one. That's cost prohibitive to do that. We buy a building, it has stuff in it, and sometimes it needs to be upgraded, it needs to be replaced, but many times it doesn't. So what I've got to do is I've got to take a portfolio of greater than 1,500 buildings across the globe with hundreds of different systems in there, and I've got to make it make sense. We've got to extract the value. We've got to be able to operate this more efficiently. And more importantly, I've got to give data back to our clients. We have tenants coming to us and say, I need to understand more about my footprint in the building. They too are trying to measure their carbon footprint. They too are trying to understand how people utilize space in their tenant floors. So, and of course our investors want to know, as well, how's the building performing? And I'm not just talking operationally. So in order to do that, cloud. So look, I came from the IT world, I've been doing it for 30 years. I will say what we're faced with right now is really the convergence of OT and IT in a way y'all have never seen it before. So that's why a CTO is standing up here talking to you all about, you were really talking about IT world here. So take your systems, connect them to a network, and then aggregate them into a data layer. And that's why I'm here on stage with Code today. So one of the things I want to say to you guys is, look, again, I've got to take a portfolio view. I'm going to be in a global environment. It'd be great if every one of you has an open API, has open architecture, has cybersecurity standards, and connects to partners like Code. Code's not out there trying to be a BAS system. What they're trying to do is communicate, right? It's a compatible architecture to really extract more value out of the building for us. But more importantly, they become our data normalization layer. So every one of our buildings, so we have standardized on Code. Every one of our buildings will be connected to Code. So I'll be coming to many of you and saying, please help me take my building at 101 California, or 845 Texas Avenue, or 345 Hudson, or 600 Collins in Australia. And I'm going to say, please help me connect to Code. Now, what Code needs you guys to do is be really good at your job, right? Have your optimization, make sure your sequencing and your programs and all of that's in order and works really well. That should be part of the commissioning of the building, because all they're doing is calling those programs. They're not replacing those programs, they're executing those programs, because what we're doing also in that layer is we're connecting the rest of what I'll call IT systems. So we're connecting sensors, we're connecting our work order systems, we're putting our preventive maintenance schedules in there, we're pulling in debt data, we're pulling in lease data. We're going to have a single pane of glass to be able to look at everything from an asset management perspective of a building. How do you operate it, and how do you manage it as a valuable product? That's what code's doing here. So I really encourage you all. Some of y'all are on the forefront of this, and I won't name names, but I do want to say thank you from Hines's perspective that y'all have had the conversations and you're opening up to code. And I will tell you, we're not the only one that's doing that. So, my peers, I will say the CTO, CIO community is a very open community. We share everything. And so what I'm going to be talking about here today is really catching on. And at the top is our digital ecosystem, meaning once I have the data and everything's connected, I can then serve that up to anything that needs it. Our ESG group that's working hard on Hines's initiative to be net zero operational carbon by 2040, all this data is going to them. All this data is going to our client experience team. All of this data is going to other revenue generating initiatives as well. So this backbone is very important. Whoops. Oops, okay. So look, part of the outcome here is we think of things in terms of what is the benefit to the owner, and I won't go through all of these in great detail, but we also think of terms and things of what are the benefits to the occupier, and then ultimately what are the benefits to us as a manager where we operate our buildings. And what my point of this is to say is what we're doing out there serves many purposes. And what I don't think we have, yeah, we do. Okay, great. All right, so let me start here and say, why are we doing this and what's changing? This is the way it used to be. It's still the way it is in some places that I'm trying to fix. We used to try to take the systems in a building and have them talk to each other. You can see, just the graphic alone tells you everything you know. That is not sustainable. Most people weren't open architecture. It was a fight every single time to get all these things to try to talk to each other. So that is also not scalable from a global perspective. That's a single asset strategy, is connecting stuff in this building and then I go to the next building, I connect everything in that building. You can't get anywhere like that. This is where we are. This is code right here in the middle. Integrate it once, use it many times. So once I'm able to integrate with Honeywell, once I'm able to integrate with Siemens, once I'm able to integrate with ALC, the list goes on, right? I can do that once and I can then scale that across all of my buildings. That is there then available for everything. And we all get new insights about these buildings. Hines thinks it's the best operator in the world now. I can tell you when we've stood these things up, it was like, oh shit. Honestly, we had some things we have to go fix, but you don't know that until you start connecting everything. So cloud architecture is extremely important to us to be able to scale, have a single source of truth, and do that across the portfolio. So now I can take 500 buildings, they can all have different buildings, they can be in different countries, they can have different partners, and I can see everything through Code Labs that we need to be able to see. There's a lot of discussion about talent acquisition and the declining talent pool. We're in the same boat. So now with this kind of technology, and let me tell you, I have teenagers at home and talk about living with a phone in their hand. That expectation, that ubiquitous connectivity is an expectation for them. If my son chooses to come into this world, he's going to expect everything to be sitting on a computer and he can make data-driven decisions and he can walk around with a mobile device and that artificial intelligence is telling him these are the things that you need to focus on, stripping out all that noise. We have to get there, and he's going to be able to not just manage one building, he needs to be able to manage 50 at a time. So thank you all very much. If I leave you with a few things before I turn over to Etrit, is to say, from a Hines perspective, please have a conversation with Code. We're looking for preferred partners. We want to, the winners for me are going to be the ones that understand this isn't a competitive environment, this is a collaborative environment. We all win if people get back into the office, we all address our carbon initiatives, we can all get data out of the system, Hines can get back to developing new buildings, we can raise more capital to put more things in our buildings. We all win when we do that. Open architecture, open API. The one thing I didn't hear talked about today was zero trust architecture. Hugely important for us from a cybersecurity perspective. So thank you all very much. I hope this gives a little perspective of, we also think about a building. I got to think about hundreds and hundreds of buildings, and how do we perform and how do we scale. Hines has grand ambitions to grow, grand ambitions, and we're well suited right now to do that. I need your help to provide those services and amenities to our clients, please. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.